DB&W makes a wonderful image saver called exrTrader, and what it does is it will save, it saves out, it's a way for you to save out all the render information, a lot more than just red, green, blue, and alpha data. So first I'm going to set my content directory. One moment. Oh, that's right. Let's try that. And I'm just going to load something at random. Nothing too exciting. Okay, like I said, this is not really going to be all that exciting right here. But let's see what we got. Well, it's like, dare I do it on 32-bit? Yeah, this was from last time I was demonstrating the stuff, and I was just trying to show how to do certain things. So let me just clean it up a bit. Whoops, I was there. I'm gonna get expensive. Okay, so right now it's just diffuse data. It's just the combination of diffuse data. It's a combination of just lighting, really. And so I'm gonna change a little bit here. I want to add some specular information. Actually, let's try 100. Okay, so now I've got something reflective in there. I'm trying to mix up the surfacing just so that it looks a little more interesting in the render buffers. Actually, with this one, let's just splurge. No, that's water, sorry. This is glass. Okay, probably going to want to also change the color a bit on at least one of them, just so that's and save that out. Okay, so now I've got something refractive, reflective, and I've got something diffuse. I probably should have put something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue in there as well, but I'll just take what I can get. All right, so if I wanted to render this out, let's see. So if I wanted to render this out on a render farm, I could get the red, green, and blue data and the alpha data as well. And that would be nice, except that compositors these days, they really, really want a lot of control over the image. They want more than just red, green, and blue data. They'd also like to know depth. They'd also like depth data so that they can add fog into the shot in post, because if they have a fog alpha, then they can layer some haze in there, or they can make farther objects bluer, and objects that are closer to the camera can become clearer. They can use depth of field, and they can use the alpha of depth to create a fake depth of field in the comp. That's just one extra channel of data. That would be the depth information. In the case of other kinds of data they might want, maybe they want to have maybe they want the specular and diffuse to be broken out separately so that they can make the objects more specular or less specular. And sometimes they might want data in addition to depth. Maybe they want the XYZ coordinates of a scene. So, okay, I've got a render, and that's great and everything. But red, green, and blue isn't enough for compositors these days. They want everything. And so if in the render globals, let's see, sorry guys, it's been a while. I'm used to dealing with this in a different way at work. Okay, go here, renders. Whoops, render globals. So I've got all these wonderful file formats, but they're all restricted to RGB and A data. They don't contain, and also a lot of them are restricted to 8 bits per channel instead of floating point. We do have a couple of floating point guys in the mix, like the Cineon and HDRR.
I would recommend TIFF 32-bit.
This one down here, yes, this one is, that's a good one, definitely. So if you need floating point data, and just floating point data alone, that's good. Let's actually try rendering that out. Let's try, I'm going to create a little folder in here called TIFF. Save. And let me open that up. Go to Sushi Drive. Whoops. My bad. This is it. Go to renders, TIFF. Okay, so go back to, I should probably just move that out here. Output, or yeah, let's render just frame 1. And also,
arbitrary.
What?
Set your frame mode to arbitrary, just like one number.
Good point. Let's try that. And then go, like, let's lower the render quality even further, because I just want to show you guys how to break stuff out. Yeah. Like I said, I'm used to dealing with this a different way at work. Okay. Oh, yeah, you're right. I'll do it for 8 for the next one. So I'm going to be saving out a floating point TIFF image, which is great because floating point means that you can adjust the color without getting banding. If you deal with something like a JPEG or a PNG, I mean, you wouldn't want to render in JPEG in the first place, but if you're dealing with PNGs or other 8 bits per channel file formats, there we go. So that's a 4 kilobyte image. And let's try also the native EXR saver. And I'm gonna change it to 8. Okay, so go save RGB, and I'll do, well, you have a choice, floating point or half. And I'm very, very glad that we've got the choice. I'm gonna do floating point because that's comparable to like how much data is in the TIFF, right?
Yeah, no, half is
16-bit.
16-bit floating point format. Half a floating point.
And normally I'd recommend using the half floating point format because it takes up a 1/5. When you're dealing with RGBA data, it seems to take up a 1/5 of the space on the hard drive. We started out Terra Nova with floating point because we thought, oh, we'll give the compositors all the range they could possibly want. And the compositors, after an episode, are like, drop it down. We don't need that much. It's taken forever to load off the network. So we're like, okay, compositors, we will obey. Now look at that. It's the same data, but notice how it's a smaller file size because EXRs are going to give you something that the LightWave TIFF saver does not. EXR gives you file compression. So even though you're getting as much data as this TIFF, it's smaller. Okay, now first thing I'm going to do, when I was working at Motion Theory and using exrTrader for my own quick preview ability, I used to set it to JPEG. I never, well, for exrTrader saving. The compositors were using exrTrader, and to see if my shot came out all right on the farm, I was using the JPEGs just to check. But I'll show you something else that we're using at work. Now, if you are giving something to the compositor, let's see, add image filter, DBNW. Dun dun dun. Now, notice by default, it has this great little thing called use render path. So I don't actually have to tell it, I don't have to do, I could use a hard-coded file if I wanted to, but 99.9% of the time, I don't want to. This is great. What this does, use render path will do, is it looks at the path that was set here, right here. And so I do not have to, and it also respects whatever RGB prefix you set. And by default, it's got final render and alpha. And right now you'll notice that it's called layer next to it because it's thinking in terms of a multi-channel EXR image. I probably should mention something else about the EXR file format. In addition to being compressed, and you can set that compression here. Look at all the nice little compression settings you get. At work, we're using this. I forget why. I think we just did all the reading and decided that this was best for what we needed, so we have it set to zips. The exrTrader will give you a choice of compression. You don't have to hard code the render path like you do with a lot of other image savers and image filtering, which means that you can use load from scene on this. You can set up once, use load from scene on this, and it'll work in all your shots, which is great. So let's see.
I got a quick question actually. You know when you popped up the list of documents to suggest, if you wanted to select all those, you have to go click.
Oh no, he's got that sucker covered. Yeah, if you want all that crap, you see this little thing down here called Quick Buffer Enable. Click Enable All, Disable All, Toggle, Enable RGBA, RGBA Z. So enable all, disable all, they're all gone. Let me just enable final render and raw color, and now let me do toggle. Now I've inverted my selection. Disable all. Now they're now not selected anymore. Enable RGB only. Now it's just final render. And when you do final render, there's something you should know. When you're doing a layered EXR, this really does refer to only the RGB data. It does not include an alpha. You have to have this one checked too, which is why in the presets there's RGBA only. Whoops. So if you want RGBA data, now right now this would get rendered, technically these are separate, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. So let me hit F10. Actually, wait, sorry, I forgot to tell you something. There's this really nice little thing, review settings. They'll show you where everything's going to go. And it tells you what kind. It says multi-buffer, and I should probably define that in a bit. But it tells you what you're going to get and what the what kind of data is going to be in there.
That's handy.
Yes, because on a per layer basis, you can say, oh yeah, I want to saddle the compositors with all the range in the world, or you can leave it at its default of 16-bit float, which is better. He defaults to the smart setting for everything except for depth, which he gives you 32-bit, which is because you don't want look, all of them are 16-bit except for depth. For depth, he gives you all the data you can eat, which you need when you have to do some really fine-tuning depth of fields in the comp. Okay, so let me hit F10, and while it's rendering, I'm going to tell you guys the difference, although I think half of the crew here already knows the difference between a multi-buffer image and separate and just regular plain Jane RGBA data. If you've dealt with 8-bit images, you know you've dealt with images that had embedded alpha data. You deal with that all the time. Well, what if you had an image that had more than one embedded alpha, which I think happens with multi-channel TIFFs anyway. It's just that exrTrader lets you expand and set as many channels as you could possibly want, and you can give them all their own little labels, and you can say inside each of these labels, like here's the channel. So like you can have your RGBA, and then you have a depth channel, so that'll be a Z channel that contains all the depth information, and it just you can just have a ton of stuff in there. We don't render multi-channel EXRs at Pixamundo, but we still use exrTrader to get all this data out for us. Now look, even though I had two buffers here, final render and alpha, I only got one image because both of them were combined and put into this one image. All right, so let's say I wanted to save out that data separately. Actually, Dave, do you have images set to XN view?
No, ACDC.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I was wondering, do you know if ACDC can do EXRs?
We got it.
All right, then Photoshop it is. I'm pretty sure, see, if this is the interesting about multi-channel EXRs out of exrTrader, is After Effects had no problem with something that only included RGB and A data. It was totally cool with it. As far as it was concerned, this is just a regular EXR that has embedded alpha data as far as it knew. That's how it looks. So, okay, so I'm gonna get a little bit into, let's say no. Now notice that it did the EXR and it did a JPEG because LightWave's still saving out the JPEGs through here. And at Motion Theory, this was handy because I could just quickly check my stuff in an image viewer. But at Pixamundo, if we're outputting EXRs, the compositors really don't want JPEG garbage in with the EXR stuff. So we use something that comes with the exrTrader called OpenEXR Dummy. It's the magical image saver that saves nothing. Okay, so if I were to hit F10 now, it would only output the EXR that we had before and nothing else. But I'm going to change something. I'm going to change final render to save as image, and I'm going to change alpha to save as image. And what's nice is a couple of things about this. You can choose whatever file format LightWave offers, including OpenEXR Dummy, but I don't recommend that. I recommend native OpenEXR. Well, I'm going to get to that in a minute, but what we're doing at work is whenever someone chooses to export a final render, we're choosing image plus alpha. And the way I do that is final render layer plus alpha layer. And the reason I do that is because when it saves out a layered EXR, it includes tons and tons of metadata. You can extract 3D cameras and nuke off of that data. So here's, I probably should just discard the anti-aliasing just because all we care about is the image saving at this point. There. Now, one of the nice things that you can do is you're not stuck with this. You have format options. When it comes to single images, you have options. And the one that we're doing at work, let me also, I'm going to go here and turn off the anti-aliasing just so we can get through this quicker. Yeah. Okay, the one we're doing at work is this for single image naming. So I hit F10. There we go. Neatly organized. It generated its own folders, already organized, which means you can drag and drop these into After Effects right away. They're the compositors are really happy. That's actually almost what we're doing. We actually went to custom because it lets you do variables. Now let's see if I can remember this correctly without resorting to the documentation. Layer. I think that's it. And then you can do scene. This isn't quite what we're doing at work, but it's close. Then you can do dot, layer. Dot means period. Whoops. Let's try that. Hit F10. Hope that went through right. There we go. It took the scene file name. Oh, that's what I wanted. I wanted a dot after the layer. Let's delete that. Cancel. There's another really nice safety feature I should mention that exrTrader has where I've got that disabled, but You can preview buffers in Viper, but the other thing that it'll let you do,
Can you show us the Viper preview?
yes, let's pull up Viper. Whoops, where is it? Darn it. It's been a while since I've done this. Thank you.
Render enable Viper.
I got, oh, that's right, here it is. There it are. Okay. This is dun, da, 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 exrTrader buffers. So let's see if we can get the depth in there. It's
Oh my god, what a good job.
did I mention that this guy's awesome? Also the processing, let's set it to 100. No, too dim, too dim. Let's set the maximum to 0. Processing, I should mention that every single image you get can be processed. This is important. Well, it's important when you want the depth to be represented as though it was a fog pass. It's important if you want to normalize or try to render out a normalized version of the motion buffer so that real smart motion blur can understand it. Channels, you can flip them, you can rename them. I can call this one Bunny. Now it'll render out an image that has a channel called Bunny. Good luck finding a program that can understand that, though. So, oh, but I did use this for this because Nuke. I think he kind of labeled these for Fusion, but Nuke, you can make channels, you can invent channels in Nuke, but the compositors were sick of doing it every single time. So what I did recently was I remapped X to red, Y to green, and Nuke's happy. It understands them now, out of the box. So we can use that for the, oh wait, Nuke needs this too. And so does After Effects, by the way. The X channel has to be flipped for the vector blur to work right. Now if you want something similar to the way Pixamundo does its business, then what you do is you tell all the subbuffers, whoops, all the subbuffers have to go out as images, but Final Render and Alpha goes out as layers. Oh, there's another nice thing he did here, and I didn't see it for an entire year that I was working with this package, because when V-Ray does stuff, it names it almost the same, but not quite. So if I wanted to do diffuse color, in V-Ray it would be called diffuse, not diff. And I was like, and I thought I was locked into that. Let me turn that into an image, save it as, oh, notice that you get the option of it can be embedded in the EXR as well as broken out separately. For all of these, if it's just an image, the image can have an embedded alpha, the alpha being the render alpha, and you can have all of them together. You can have the multi-channel EXR and everything can be broken out separately, all in one go with one image filter. So let's go back, put that to image. Now let me do an F10, save this out. I should mention that the way they've got V-Ray set up, this is how it's set up. So you have, so this is kind of close. Notice that you're, oh, that's why I used 2 exrTraders. The reason I used 2 exrTraders to do all this is because Pixamundo has incredibly strict naming conventions. They want everything formatted like this, well, with 4-digit padding, and with the buffer in there. But they also want the beauty to be just the same, just without the buffer mentioned in there. So what I did was I used 2 exrTraders, one just to do the final render with an embedded alpha with the proper Pixamundo naming, and then a second exrTrader for all of the other buffers. So just throw them all in there, and it follows Pixamundo naming conventions, and everyone's happy.
Okay, in the naming conventions, do you have to worry about the folder while you're making the naming conventions, or are you just already set the folder?
That's what I'm getting to, because it's kind of an interesting topic at work, because for a whole year, I thought I was locked to whatever this was. I thought this was standard. I thought I was just locked. And I didn't realize, and then like last week I was like, ah! Because notice how this thing here, it's like layer, and all these keep talking about layers. And then I noticed that layer name has some text in it that you can change. So if I wanted this to be more like V-Ray, or rather more like our V-Ray pipeline, there, I've just changed it, hit F10. at least that buffers just became more like V-Ray. Look, and look in there.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no, it gets better. It doesn't care. It also gives you safety options. Right now the safety options are turned off. There we go. I've just made up my own, yep, I've just made up my own thing of whole cloth. Now it tells you what's in there, but this is the custom name they'll drop right into your pipeline. So if you have an established pipeline and it has to be called diffuse, you can call it diffuse. If it has to be. So that was just, I was like, oh my gosh. Metadata, let's see. I haven't really messed with this much yet, but I do update the author with the name. I use a Python command to get the name of the user who submitted the render, and then I put the author in there. Comment, I guess I could probably put some more interesting stuff in there, like animation versions, but I haven't really messed with all of this stuff just yet. Now notice, here's some safety measures. This will save your rear end in a production, because watch this, nothing will happen. And you're going to ask yourself, what's the point of that? This better not happen. Yay, nothing happened. When I worked on Last Samurai in 2003, in the good old days, I was using render buffer export to get the data out to the compositor. And one day I was working on version 2, and I'm doing some F9 test renders. And a compositor comes up the stairs and goes, Jen, are you working with this shot in any way? And I was like, yeah. He said, you've just overwritten all my buffers. Could you go back and re-render frame 150, 153, and 256? I was like, sorry. But I kept forgetting to uncheck. Kept forgetting to update my render buffers. This thing will save your bum